What's up, everybody, and welcome to Bios3 Raw TV. Trying to open this email over here. We've talked many times about people that just don't have what it takes to get to the show when they decide they're going to do a show. We've talked about how you have to have a sense of urgency. We've talked about all these things, but when it comes into play, you know, there are some people that are going to get it done no matter what, and some people that are not. There's some people that the tiniest little thing will just throw them off trajectory and they'll go in another complete direction. Like I talked about that girl on Facebook who has been dieting for like 2.5 years. If you haven't got lean in 2.5 years, you have fucked it up majorly. But anyways, you know, or maybe you're just scared to get on stage or whatever. But I have a client, this guy, and he's a young guy, always wanted to compete, and he was doing it. I mean, he was getting close to the show, and he was busting his ass, and he was training hard, he was making these big changes, he was getting lean, his glutes were coming in, you know, legs were looking good, everything was right where it was supposed to be. And then I get an email from him. I'm going to read a piece of this so I can explain what it really happened. He said his mom came home sick, and long story short, she was rushed to the ER. She's in a medically induced coma. She has bacterial meningitis. At this point, she can't have any visitors or anything like this. And he said he was about to just scrap the whole thing. And he said, he's not going to lie. He said, I had some Cheetos and Pringles. Like, I kind of cheated on my diet a little bit. He's like, because I figured this was going to be it. He's like, I'm not going to be able to do the show. There's no way. And the show was this weekend. You know, the show was Saturday. This is happening like the previous Monday, right before the show. So the week, like peak week, this is when this is happening. He said, but while he was doing this, he'd always wanted to compete. And while he was doing this phase of the competition training and diet, his mom was super proud of him. And she was so happy that he was finally going to accomplish his goal of getting on stage after all the years of wanting to do it. And she saw the work that was going in, the effort, the changes, and saying, like, you know, this is my son doing this, and this is incredible. And he said after that, he said she's, you know, been his biggest fan through this whole thing. He said after all that, he's like, you know, he goes, I have to finish this thing. Right now, she's in a medically induced coma, critical condition. They're not letting any visitors in anyways, so there's nothing I can do except sit there and wait and just let all the work go to waste and, you know, not make my mom proud by sitting there. He's like, or I can go and finish this thing. It's a couple days from now, and, you know, the situation's probably not going to change. I'm not going to be able to go see her anyway. If I am, I'll go see her, but I'll continue with what I'm doing. And, you know, he said that he feels like if he let it go, it would eat at him that he let it go. And part of that is because she wanted him to do it. Now, he's in a tough spot. I understand 100%. I mean, this would derail a lot of people. I mean, most people would just say, fuck it, I'm done. They would sit at the hospital if it took 2 weeks for her to get better, or, God forbid, worst case scenario, you know, not get better. They would sit there for the 2 weeks because they feel like they had to be there. The realism of what's happening is the person that's in the coma doesn't know that you're sitting in the room, in the waiting room. You're not even in there with them. They say that people in comas, you can talk to them, and they can hear you, and they know you're there, subconsciously, I guess, but you're not even in the same room with them. They won't let you in there. So essentially, you know, you're out there wasting time that you could be doing something. Now, that pain that you're feeling that's making you waste the time is pain. That's not a real thing. It's not a tangible thing. You can't touch it or feel it. It's an emotion that you're feeling. Now, pain can be something negative, and it can be used for something positive. You can channel that pain and that anger and stuff into a positive energy and get something out of it, which he's doing. You know, and it takes a lot of guts. I've been there. I was there when... Well, I wasn't there, but I got the phone call when my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, and there was no operation. He was inoperable, and, you know, he wasn't going to do the therapy. And, you know, I was like, what does that mean? And they were like, we don't know. You know, we just don't know. And I had 8 weeks out from the show, you know, or was it 8 weeks? Or it was like 10 weeks out from the show, I think. Yeah, I think it was 10 weeks. And I said, I got 10 weeks. It's 2.5 months of training for this thing. I'm just going to drop out. I'm going to go up to Rhode Island. I'm just going to sit there. Well, sitting there with my dad being sick, watching him being sick, it's not what he wanted, you know. So I kind of stepped back and said, well, what do I do? You know, I remember him saying, go through with the show. My mom saying, go through with the show, and when you're done, come home. When you're done with it, come home. We'll be here when you're done. You know, and I remember looking at Kari when I got off the phone. I was like, what do I do? You know, for a couple of days, I was trying to figure out what to do, but I knew instinctively for me in my heart to stay on my diet and train hard. That's how I get through things. That's what gets me through things. So I knew that while I was processing this stuff, to go to McDonald's and eat or to not do my cardio because I don't feel like it in the morning wouldn't help. I'd feel worse about it. And that would be eating at me. But it helps when I do that stuff. So staying on point like that is something that helped. And long story short, when I got through it and I got to that show, and then I was going to drop out of the next one because it felt like between my back injury I sustained the week of the show, my dad, the placings of the show, there were so many things eating at me that I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just done. And then 2 days before the show, like this guy, it clicks in your head and say, look, I did all this. I set this goal. If I give up on this goal, I'm going to regret it. I know I'm going to regret it. And my parents want me to do it. I can't get there any faster. I've already booked the flight, so I'm not going to be at home any faster. So, you know what, let's just go ahead and do it this. And you try to focus as best you can, and you get the job done. And when all is said and done, you feel proud, and your parents feel proud of you, and everyone around you feels proud of you. And even though they kind of know what you went through, they really don't know what you went through with that struggle internally. And it's something that, I just got to go on record here. Like I told him I would leave his name out and too many specifics so that people wouldn't, know his business. But I'm extremely proud of this kid for sticking it out. And it's not about just bodybuilding. It would be if he, decided to get up tomorrow and go to work. If he goes to work tomorrow, I'm proud of him for that. If he goes to school and studies tomorrow at study hall so he can, he's in college or whatever, I'm proud of him for that. A lot of people will ball up in a fetal position and stay there, and feel sorry for themselves. And what's interesting is, although we're mammals, we're still animals. Let's face facts. We have all the primal instincts of everything else that's out there alive. But you ever seen a wild animal feel sorry for itself? It's because no, you haven't. Its thought process is different, and it goes on and it moves on and it's able to move on. And we have that ability in us, but a lot of people choose not to exercise it because they choose to wallow in the circumstances that they're in and not take something positive. Something negative and something bad is always going to happen to everyone. It's just a fact. But if there can be something positive to be generated from that, which is this, I'm saying this and people are going to be like, what the fuck, Jerry? There was my high school principal, Mr. Furtado, had actually sat me down when I was getting in a bunch of trouble in his, and I think I might have told this story before. He sat me down in his office and he wrote this little card. It was like an index card. He said, negative, he drew a line, and then put the word into, and then a plus. And he showed me this with like a smirk on his face, like, like this is the key to life. And I'm like, a minus symbol and a plus symbol? He's like, Jerry, turning a negative into a positive. And I was like, that was like my expression. I was like, okay, whatever. And I just kind of heard him out, and he gave me the card. He said, some of my students take this home and they put it on their mirror and they live by it, blah, 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 blah. And at 15 years old, I was like, well, those students are fucking retards. I'm going to McDonald's. Like, that's what was going through my head at the time. And, I realized years later that he was right. Trying to find something positive in the negative things, very hard to do sometimes. My first instinct is to go worst case scenario and spiral out of control until I have the worst case scenario worked out in my head that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. So that if it happens, I'm prepared. But sometimes I get so wrapped up in that when the bad thing doesn't necessarily happen as bad as it possibly could, it's a lot more of a relief to me. And, a lot of people have a hard time understanding, like, why does he go so fast and spiral out of control into those bad thoughts and that bad energy? It's because I'm getting to a place where I'm preparing myself for the worst case scenario. And when you do that, things like this that come up, you're able to not necessarily go to the gym and train, but cope with them and get past them and turn something positive out of it a lot easier. Bios3training@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.bios3training.com is a blog, and it's down Proud Bicep, and we're out.